And at the age of 9, I had a major panic attack, where your heart's pounding, your chest feels very tight, and you're having trouble breathing, and tears are coming down my face. My father saw me, picked me up, he held me, he carried me out of there. And on the drive home, I said, Dad, I don't want to feel like that ever again. Helpless. Like, there's nothing I can do to help.
So, welcome to another episode of So What's Your Story? And today I'm joined stateside by Dr. Amir Rashidian. Amir has an unusual starting point to become a specialist chiropractic professional. Devoting his life and his chosen passion and profession, after as a young boy, he witnessed his own father overcome a seriously debilitating set of injuries through chiropractic care. He now owns his own highly regarded private practice in Frederick, Maryland, US. Amir has attained many accolades throughout his esteemed career and has conducted biomedical research where his findings were published in respected clinical journals, and has received various recommendations from the US Department of Health. Amir has also consulted with and coached dozens of other doctors to help them successfully start their own practices. He is a devoted husband and father, a convert from Muslim to Christianity, but above all, a man who had a dream at an early age, and despite many setbacks, that dream became a reality. And today he lives with his passion and his purpose. Welcome, Amir, to So What's Your Story?
Thank you so much. I am honored to be here with you. I've been looking forward to this, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
No, absolutely. My pleasure. And you're stateside, I said. So where are you right now? I'm in the northwest of England in Knutsford in Cheshire. It is 4:30 p.m. on the 8th of January 2025. It's minus 5 degrees outside. I'm bloody freezing. I'm sitting in a polo neck. I've got my heating on and I'm still cold. Where are you, Amir?
I'm on the east coast of the United States in Frederick, Maryland. It is 11:30 a.m. here. And it's cold here too. We had a snowstorm the past 2 days, so we've got a little bit of snow on the ground. It's nice. Everything's white.
We're all good. Well, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, and so let's sort of, because I said in the intro there you had an unusual disadvantage to the start of your prolific career, and there's no other word for it. But you actually grew up in Iran, didn't you? Very, very young in Iran.
Yes, I was born in Iran in 1974. And when I was born, Iran was not the Islamic Republic that it is today. Back then, it was a monarchy, and there was a lot of prosperity. We used to spend every summer in Europe for at least a month, and the Iranian passport actually had some credibility back then. Now it's very different.
Yeah, no, I we don't want to get into politics at all, but as you say, it was a very different place then. And at an early age, you witnessed something. I think, if I'm right in saying, you were 9 years of age, right? And you witnessed just get some clarity on this. I think this was in Iran. I think when we had you witnessed a lady giving birth.
That's right.
And a midwife not being particularly helpful. And, listeners, please, if this is difficult to listen to, then just close your ears for a second, because the lady was basically left alone and was struggling, probably going to die, right?
Oh, yeah. So at 9 years old, my father wanted to show me some of the villages where the underprivileged communities of Iran live. This was in the the foothills of the Elborz mountain range. And in this one village, the woman went into labor. The midwife showed up and examined her for a minute or two and stood up and said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do. The baby is not alive. And this woman's time is short unless you can get her to a hospital." And it would have been a 2-hour mule ride down the side of the mountain before another 2 hours of a drive to the nearest hospital. So everyone knew she wasn't going to make it. And one by one, people just left her alone to, slowly pass away in her husband's arms. And her husband was just devastated. And at the age of 9, looking into the eyes of this young woman who was just told she's not going to live another few hours, I had a major panic attack, where your heart's pounding, your chest feels very tight, and you're having trouble breathing, and tears are coming down my face. My father saw me, picked me up, he held me, he carried me out of there. And he calmed me down, and the two of us climbed down the mountain. We got in our car to drive home. And on the drive home, I said, Dad, I don't want to feel like that ever again. Like what? Helpless. Like there's nothing I can do to help. I should have been able to help. And he asked the great question, what are you going to do about it? And I said, well, I guess I'll be a surgeon. I'll be the best surgeon in the whole world. And I'll carry my medical bag with me everywhere I go so that I can save lives. So that doesn't happen in front of me ever again. And that was the plan.
Wow. So you said that at 9 years of age. So that it's funny, isn't it, how you become what you become in a very different way, because you're a chiropractor, but you do, you do make huge differences to lives. And your father saying that to you, I know, was a pivotal point, right? And it's something which will come back to this anxiety thing, because it triggered again later in life. And so from Iran, you moved to the US.
That's right. We landed in Los Angeles. It was my mother and I with 2 suitcases and $500 of cash.
Wow.
And we originally had 3 suitcases, but the airlines lost one of them. And what I learned was...
Some things never change, right?
Oh, yeah. I learned you shouldn't put your pants in one suitcase and your shirts in the other, because I had no pants. I had lots of shirts.
Now, when we say pants in the UK, that means something different to the US. For hers, it's their underwear, underwear. But for you, it's trousers, right? It's trousers.
Trousers, exactly. Either way, you shouldn't put the pants in different suitcase either.
Either way. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So just quickly, Amir, you're now in a totally different country. America is very, very different to a lot of places in the world, even today. But that back then, you've come from a very cultural difference in background. You've landed in America. I guess your eyes are wide open. You're probably got a mix of excitement, fear, all sorts of things going on. Tell us a little bit about growing up then, and that cultural difference early on, and then how you fully adjusted to that.
It was being in Los Angeles was the most terrifying time of my life, and that's comparing it to being in Iran when the Iran-Iraq war was going on.
Jeez.
There was bombing. I mean, there was one time we were staying with a relative in Tehran, and they would tell us to sleep with the radio on, because if there was an air raid siren, you had to listen to that siren and run to the basement or run to a bomb shelter. And so a little after midnight, this siren went off, and we all run out, and we ran down the hallway, down the stairs, all the way to the basement, where everybody else from the building was waiting. And I heard the roar of this jet engine overhead, and then the whistle of a bomb that has just been dropped. And the whistle gets louder and louder as the bomb is getting closer and closer, but you can't tell where it is. It's too high pitched, so it could be right over your head, but it could be a block away, and you just have to wait for the explosion to find out if you're going to be okay. That was terrifying. The bomb didn't hit us, obviously, but terrifying. But that wasn't as scary as being all alone in a different country with a different language and not knowing what's going to happen or where you're going to be. And so coming to America, huge culture shock. And this is, we showed up in 1985. So in 79 was the hostage crisis. And so there was a little bit of still animosity towards Iranians in America anyways, because of the whole revolution and the hostages.
Yeah. And so then Dad comes over a little later, does he? Or
my dad would come and go. Once we got to the U.S., Dad and Mom didn't live together anymore. But Dad would go to Iran, do some work, come to the U.S., spend some time there, and he traveled a lot. But yeah, it was a lot of times. I felt like I just had a single mom.
Yeah, it must have been. I guess, what was it challenging? I mean, what was the feeling in the household for you? Because now you're sort of, obviously you're moving through into your early teens. You're getting a grip of being in America. What's going on with you, sort of emotionally? Is it does it become home feel to you, or is there still this division?
When you spend the first 11 years of your life in one country and then the rest in another, I'm 50 years old now. I still feel like I don't belong in either one. So when I go to Iran, I feel like a foreigner, just because I haven't been there and things have changed while I was gone. And when I'm in the U.S., I feel like a foreigner because I'm different. And so it's almost a little bit like you don't belong, but it's also a good thing because you're very unique. Yeah, my wife is American. I have three sons, and they have learned our culture, Iranian culture, as well as the American culture. You look at them, you would think they're pretty much American. But I'm hoping they'll learn some of the other culture as well.
Yeah, sure. It's important, right? It's important to know our roots and our heritage and our culture and everything else, but also respect where we are in the world as well. So I'm going to fast forward this story because there's lots to get through, and it is a fascinating story. But your father gets ill, yeah, and it is a musculoskeletal issue. At the time, you obviously from that early age said, I'm gonna do this, and you started to follow that path. You're studying to become a doctor, yeah.
Oh yeah.
But there's a twist to this story, isn't there?
That's right. So I was a student at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. I was in my second year, 19 years old. I went home for Christmas break, and I walked into our house, and my dad was there, and he was wearing a big, thick, white neck brace. You could tell he was under the influence of some heavy narcotic painkillers, and he was limp and numb from the shoulders down. He couldn't lift his arms to even give me a hug to say hello. And so we spent my Christmas vacation, about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, going from doctor to doctor, trying to figure out what is wrong with my dad. And every doctor we went to said, this is beyond my scope. You have to go to this other doctor. And from specialist to specialist, we ended up in a neurosurgeon's office. As you know, neurosurgeons operate on the brain and spinal cord. And the neurosurgeon took a look at my dad and said, you needed surgery yesterday. What are you waiting for? You have bone spurs, degenerative changes, disc bulges. They're pressing on your spinal cord, and it's choking the life that flows from your brain down to the rest of your body, especially into your arms. And unless we take the pressure off that spinal cord, this is not going to end well. And he said, we're going to break and remove the bones in the back of your spine and put rods and screws on the sides, fuse your whole neck. You'll never turn your head again. You may not regain function of your hands, but we're hoping you'll have less pain. And by the way, there's a small chance you'll die because this is a serious surgery. My father was 70 years old at the time. And so he actually had me when he was 51. So there was a big age gap between he and I. So at 70, they said it's a big risk because you're older. And, there's such a thing as a young 70 and an old 70. There's some 70-year-olds who are fantastically healthy, and then there's the other. So he was the older kind. And so we got a second and a third opinion. All three neurosurgeons said the same exact thing. And we got in a taxi to go home. And in the back of the taxi, I was sitting next to my dad, and I was carrying his x-rays and MRIs and CTs and medical records, big stack of film. Nowadays, 31 years later, they come in a CD. There's a small disc, but back then it was a big stack of medical charts I was carrying in the back of the taxi, and I looked over at Dad, still wearing his neck brace, and he was just cringing because every bump that taxi hit was sending this lightning bolt of pain through his body, and looking in his eyes, I could tell he didn't want to live anymore. Jesus. And in that moment, I got transported emotionally back to the village where I saw the woman slowly dying in her husband's arms. And I started to have the same feelings of tightness in my chest and heart pounding and having trouble breathing and tears welling up in my eyes. And this taxi driver looked at Dad and I in his rearview mirror, and he said, "Sir, I noticed you're in a lot of pain, and I know you asked me to take you home, but there's a chiropractor right down the street here, and I've heard he helps people like you. Would you like me to take you there?" Now, I was a 19-year-old know-it-all. I thought the only way to get better from anything is drugs and surgery, and there's no other options. Dad was terrified of the surgery he was about to have. And he knew chiropractors don't use drugs and they don't operate. They don't use scalpels. He said, sure, let's go check it out. So we show up to this chiropractor's office. The place is under construction. I mean, you walk in, it looks like a war zone. There's dust and paint flying everywhere. There's a crew putting up drywall in the back. It does not look like a doctor's office. So I said, Dad, grab the taxi. We need to get out of here. Before we could leave, this chiropractor came around the corner, shook our hands, introduced himself. And he said, wait right here. He ran to the back, brought a view box. See, nowadays, x-rays are all digital. Back then, you had to have a box that had a light in it, and you put the film on the light box. So he brought one of those, put it on the floor, plugged it into an open socket in the framing that's going to be a wall someday. And he started reading my dad's MRIs and x-rays. And after a minute, he looked at my dad. He said, I can help you. He said, I'm not going to break and remove bones in your spine. I'm not going to put rods and screws in your neck, and I'm not going to have you on painkillers for the rest of your life. What I will do is with my hands, adjust the vertebrae of your spine to gently, little by little over time, take pressure off those nerves. And as I do, your body will begin to self-heal and self-regulate. And I thought he was out of his mind. I thought he was a quack. I said, what do you mean the body will heal? What do you mean the body will self-regulate? That makes no sense to me. He said, well, don't you produce enzymes to digest your food? And don't you produce hormones to help you live? And don't you regulate your heart rate? That's self-regulation. And every cell in your body is constantly repairing and regenerating. Your skin cells are only 30 days old. Your liver is only 24 days old. Everything in your body is new every few days to every few months. Why shouldn't this regenerate the same way? And he also said, your dad, your father, has bone spurs that are growing into the spinal canal, narrowing the canal and pressing on the spinal cord, and is choking the life that flows from his brain to the rest of his body. And unless we find a way to take the pressure off, it's not going to end well. Word for word what the neurosurgeon said, and my respect level went up because it seemed like he knew the same information as the neurosurgeon. And so Dad said, what do we need to do? He said, you need to be here 6 days a week for the next 6 months. And Dad agreed. Now, he didn't have the money, but he borrowed the money, figured it out. He paid for it. He went there. People had to drive him. Now, one thing I'll tell you, Dad's favorite thing to do was writing. He was a writer, so he enjoyed writing books, but he never published anything, but he wrote jokes, poems, and stories all the time. He was a great storyteller. And so, but now he couldn't even use his hand because he couldn't hold a pen. His hands were worthless. He couldn't work. He couldn't sleep at night because lying down was too much pressure on his neck. He had to be upright even at night. And so he's sitting in the dark all night, unable to do anything. And so Dad went through this 6-month process. At the end of the 6 months, he walked in that same office. The construction was done. This was now a full-fledged doctor's office with a reception desk and a receptionist behind the counter. And the patients were all sitting in the reception area. The office was packed and full. Dad walked in at the end of the 6 months. He picked up the pen with his own hand. He signed his own name on the sign-in sheet at the reception desk. And then he turned around, he held the pen up over his head like he's holding up a trophy because until then he couldn't even raise his arms over his head. And he walked back and forth showing everybody. And the other patients in the office were laughing at him. Who's this old man walking around with a pen over his head? But the receptionist behind the counter, she started to cry because she was there when he would walk in and she had to write his name for him because he couldn't even hold the pen. And we got little strength. She would hold his hand and try to help him guide his hand so he could write. But now he's able to do everything again. And guess what? He started writing letters, poems, jokes. He used to write letters to the president of the U.S. just to give him his opinion because, he had a lot of opinions to share. And so the president started getting letters from Dad all over again. But that was the story. And I saw that. I saw that this chiropractor did this without drugs, without surgery. And I said, wow, what if we do this? What if I do that? Then I don't even have to carry a medical bag with me. I can save lives before it becomes a problem. I can prevent surgery. I can prevent addictions to pain medications. And so I decided I wanted to be a chiropractor.
Incredible. What a story. What an unbelievable. It is unbelievable. It's a miracle almost, but it isn't because it's a great chiropractic practitioner fixing your dad, recognizing the problem and instead of saying, hey, listen, this is not, Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
When your dad sounds like an incredible guy and a very positive spirit and energy, but when he was undergoing this, I would imagine, I don't know, I'm surmising, that it ain't exactly a holiday. You're not exactly jumping for joy and going, oh yeah, twist that spine a little bit more. Oh yeah, that's beautiful, But so a lot of pain going on. Was your dad one of these men My late father unfortunately suffered with severe health problems.
Mm.
He very, very rarely moaned. Very rarely. In fact, I never heard him moan because when I'd say to Dad, Dad, look, it's okay. You can have a little whinge, you know. It's fine, you know. Just have a little moan, get it off your chest. He'd say, look, you know, come on. Whilst I'm in the condition I'm in, there's someone out there worse than me. So was your dad an optimist, and did he see the optimistic side of the treatment process, or was he like, "Oh my God, I got to go again"? Or you know what I'm alluding to here?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There were times he was discouraged. I watched his first chiropractic adjustment, and when the doctor did that first adjustment, I heard a little pop in his neck, and instantly I saw his face just clear up as if all the pain disappeared. And he described it as if someone just poured cold water on a hot flame. He said everything's gone. But within a second or two, all the pain came back.
Sure.
And so that was the big discouragement, was when will it go away and stay away?
Yeah.
And even 2 months, 3 months into care, under chiropractic care, he said, I don't know if I'm getting any better. And then his friends would say, but you stopped getting worse. So you should continue. At least you stopped getting worse.
Yeah.
So he really had to, he really had to push and continue. But yeah, the adjustments actually weren't painful and uncomfortable. He looked forward to those. He would have liked to go 4 or 5 times a day if he could.
Yeah, sure. And we'll skip to this later on because I've got a bunch of questions for you now, where you are in your career and what you've seen with helping thousands of very, very severe cases. I'm interested in the power of the mind as well as the treatment. And I know you do all of this holistic approach almost, where it's, it's not just about, let me just twist that. It's about, you've got this very unique way that you execute what you do for suffering people. And it's beautiful. And we're going to come back to that. But I just wanted to just ask that question early on, because it seemed fascinating that your father, and you've answered it, but, obviously very articulately, and thank you for that. But so let's now get into the little bits of nitty gritty, which I find fascinating, because as you know, So What's Your Story is always about overcoming adversity, and you definitely did, because you find yourself in the depths of, and I'm going to ask you to explain what an MCAT is, because I know most Americans listening to this will go, oh, come on Ian, that's easy. But, it's different across the pond and other parts of the world. So explain to us what an MCAT is. But you're studying, you're at medical school, you're studying MCAT, you're finding it hard. Tell us what happens. So start off with just explaining what an MCAT is, Amir, and the intensity of the study to become a doctor.
Yeah, so the way it works is you have to do 4 years of undergraduate studies, and you actually get a Bachelor of Science degree in something. Mine is in chemistry. And then the next 4 years, you're in medical school. So I was still in, they call it pre-medical studies. And you take this test. It's a standardized test called the Medical College Admissions Test. Stands for MCAT, Medical College Admission Test. And at the time when I took it, the test took 8 hours, and there was a section on, they called physical sciences, which was chemistry and physics, a section on biological sciences, which was biology and organic chemistry. There was a section on verbal reasoning, where you have to read long passages, literary passages, have nothing to do with science, and you answer questions so they can see if you can understand what you read. Then you had to write 2 essays. So that's the structure of the test, and I did very well in the biological sciences. I did extremely well in physical sciences because chemistry was my major. But when it came to verbal reasoning, I was very low. I was probably in the bottom 20 percentile because for some reason I could not finish the passages. I was less than halfway through the test when time ran out. Now, at the time, I had no idea this was the case. Later, when I was 40 years old, I started to write a book. And then I got diagnosed with dyslexia. It turns out I had dyslexia my whole life. Now, I never knew it. I thought I was slow. I thought I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. I remember being in elementary school, first, second grade. Everyone's learned how to read, and the teacher would ask me to read out loud, and the students would start laughing, and it's not their fault. It sounded very funny because I couldn't read very well, especially out loud, so they would laugh. Even now, when I'm in a Bible study and someone asks me to read a Bible verse out loud, unless I have that verse memorized already, it doesn't sound good when I read it because of the dyslexia. My eyes actually jump around. I don't see the words in order when I look at a page, and so it's very difficult. So I failed. I failed the verbal section of the MCAT, and they basically found out I wasn't going to get into medical school. Now, my senior year, everything happened with my father. My sophomore year, which was second year of college. At the time, I thought chiropractic was amazing, but I was still thinking I'm still going to go to medical school and become a surgeon, a medical doctor. My fourth year started September of 1995, and 2 weeks into the first semester, I realized there was no chance I was getting into a medical school. So everything I'd worked for all my life was going to go away. And my friends, my classmates, they had gotten interviews, they had gotten their acceptance letters. I hadn't. So at that moment, I decided I don't need to stay in school. Everything I wanted to do is not going to happen. So I stopped going to classes. One of my college roommates at the time was a big drinker, and his father was a wealthy man who worked for a television station as an TV anchor, newscaster, and he had lots of money, and he had credit cards at his disposal, and he would drink every night. And so I started going drinking with him instead of going to school. So we would drink all night, and then we'd sleep all day, and drink all night, and sleep all day. And I did that for 2 months. I'm supposed to be in my fourth year of university. I had fantastic grades, and I should have graduated with honors, and I should have been offered jobs even though I didn't get into medical school, but I threw it all away. And so 2 months later, this was the middle of November, my roommate and I were at a bar drinking. We walked into this bar. Within 10 minutes, we had a $90 tab, which means we were drinking very, very fast, and we were drinking a lot. And he took a shot and slammed the shot on the counter, and he said, "A real man can hold his liquor." And until then, this hadn't hit me. But as soon as he said that, it was like a ton of bricks just hit me. I said, that's not a real man. A real man doesn't stumble when he walks. A real man doesn't slur his speech. A real man doesn't vomit and puke in public. And a real man doesn't turn his back on his dream, his lifelong dream. And that's not a real man. I'm not being a real man. That's not a real man. In that moment, I decided I cannot keep doing this. I have to stop. And I walked out of that bar, and I walked back to the dorm rooms at the college, and I slept that night for the first time. It was before midnight. I slept. In the morning, I said a prayer. Now, in Iran, growing up, my mom and dad always talked about God. It's a Muslim country, so it was the Muslim version of God, but still, I had a faith in a creator. And so I said, God, I need your help because I'm about to go back to class, and I haven't been to class in 2 months, and final exams are coming up in a week. And so I walked in. My first class was physical chemistry. Now, as a senior, fourth year college student, my classes were not easy classes. I had advanced experimental organic chemistry and physical chemistry, instrumental analytical chemistry, descriptive inorganic chemistry. These are high-level classes. When I was a first-year student, we had 100 students in the class. No one noticed if you were there. In these senior level classes, I had 8, maybe 9, maybe 10 students. And so when I'm sitting in that classroom, everyone's staring at me going, who is this guy? The professor's looking at me. After class, I walked up to her and said, hey, I'm in your class. And she said, I know, but you haven't been here. I said, I need to pass the class. Can you help me? She said, absolutely not. You need to drop the class, retake it next semester. You'll never catch up. I said, if I drop the class, I'll lose my scholarship. My family has no money. I cannot afford to drop. I need to pass the class. She said, the only thing I can tell you is take the final exam. If you pass the final, I'll pass you. If you fail the final, you fail. And so I instead of and every professor, long story, I got all of them to convince to allow me to take the final exam. But sitting in the classrooms made no sense because I didn't know what they were talking about. So I grabbed all my textbooks, moved out of the dorms, moved into my mother's house, which was 30 minutes down the road. And so I would get up at 6 a.m. and study until 2 a.m. I would sleep 4 hours and study again to try to catch up so I could pass these final exams. And in the States, we have a holiday called Thanksgiving. So the Friday after Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving is always on a Thursday. The next day, Friday morning, 6 a.m., my alarm went off. Now, I had been doing this 4 hours of sleep every night for, I don't know, about 10, 15 days, and I was exhausted. And I got up and walked into the shower, and as that warm water hit me, I just started to cry because I felt extremely helpless, believing that I'd never catch up, I'd never pass the classes, and my future is done. And at that moment, I decided I would pray again. And I said, God, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm tired. I want to go back to bed. I have no energy left. Will you help me? Can you help me? I need some help. And in that moment, I remembered a few things, almost like when God just dumps memories into your brain. I didn't hear a voice, but I felt it. I felt like he was speaking to me. I felt these memories. And the first thing I remembered was earlier on when I was still in, 10th, 11th, 12th grade before college, my mother had met a lady named Nancy. Nancy would come to our house and sit with her and study the Bible. Nancy led my mother to Christ and helped her and took her to church and everything. And really, she was a wonderful, wonderful lady. So Nancy would come and study the Bible with my mother, and when I would come home after school in the evening or whatever time it was, if she was there, she would say, Amir, come sit with us. We're studying the Bible. And I would say, no, thank you. I have homework. And I would go upstairs to my room and I would do my studies. But I think, and even though I would shut the door and try not to listen, they spoke so loudly that I could hear everything. So it felt like I was right in the middle of that Bible study every single evening. It was once a week, but it felt like every day. And I heard everything. I learned about Jesus. I learned about his miraculous birth and life and miracles he performed, his death, his resurrection. I learned all and how he wanted us to give our life to him so that we could live that full life. And I had heard all that. So that day in the shower, God reminded me of all those things that Nancy talked about. And I said, God, is that what you need? You want me to, in this time, just give my life to you and believe that Jesus is God? And I felt like he said, Amir, it's time you believed because I love you. And I did. I got down on my knees and I said, I give you my whole life, everything. I am yours 100%, Lord. And I believe as of this moment, I declare that Jesus is God, Son of God, who paid the penalty for me. And now I'm a Christian. And I'll follow you all the days of my life, I promise you. And I felt a peace. And this peace was just something you can't describe with words, but it felt good. And I came out of the shower, I felt energized. Not because anything supernatural happened. Obviously the Holy Spirit enters you when you're saved. Sure. But I felt good because I said, my eternity is secure. So what happens now is not as important. So I had a little bit of a peace and a more relaxed demeanor. So when I was reading those books, I was able to study easier and better. Now, one thing in the Iranian culture is we always ask for signs. I think it's a Middle Eastern thing. You say, God, give me a sign if I'm right or whatever. So I had asked God, would you give me a sign that you're that this is exactly what you want me to do. And then later, I decided I would pray for 10 minutes every hour as I was studying those books. And I just talked to God. So I would study from the top of the hour until 50 minutes passed. And then for 10 minutes, I would pray and then study again and then 10 minutes. So 1:50 p.m., I closed the book and I started praying. At the end of 10 minutes, as a Christian, I was now praying, in the name of Jesus, amen. But this time, right before I said that, a thought came to mind. I said, hey God, I bet there's millions of prayers coming at you right now at every moment. And everyone's praying to you. There's probably 1 billion Christians in the world. They're all praying. How do you hear every single prayer? Do you have an executive assistant who takes notes? Do you have angels that bring you the most important things? And do you have an answering machine? Back then, we had those cassettes and answering machine. Do you have an answering machine that records all the prayers and then you listen to them later? How does this work? And the specific question asked was, every time I call out to you, do you hear me? And the phone rang. Instantly, the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and it was my mother. Mom said, Amir, I'm here at Nancy's house. We're studying the Bible, and suddenly Nancy said she needs to talk to you. And Nancy got on the phone. Nancy didn't say hello. She said, Amir, I need to tell you, every time you call out to God, he hears you.
Wow. Woo! I mean, that's just sent a shiver down my spine.
And yeah.
And that was it. That was the moment. Yeah, that was the moment. The rest of the story, Amir, it's fascinating. You went on to excel. There's no other word for it. Yeah. You became and are a very, very prolific and well-respected chiropractor, practitioner. Nearly got that wrong. But you also, you're not your normal, I don't like that word. You're not your everyday chiropractor. You do something with your clients which comes almost full circle back to this experience with your dad. Tell us a little bit more about preventative care and practice. Because I feel it's very, very close to your heart, and it's what you've written about this. You've been, this is what you do, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wrote 2 books. One is called The Stress-Proof Life. The other is called Cracking the Stress Secret, How to Turn Pressure into Power. And that the concept is that how your body responds to stress determines how healthy you are, and how healthy you are is determined 100% by how much stress you can safely handle. If your ability to tolerate stress is low, you handle a little bit of stress. The minute your stress level goes above that limit, you are now susceptible to illness and injury. If your tolerance to stress is high, we call that GAP, General Adaptation Potential, which is your ability to adapt to stress. Under stress, everything responds. The human body is designed to respond and adapt to its environment. And so if you can adapt and respond accurately, safely to stress, then your likelihood of being ill or injured is less. When I was 8 years into practice, because for those first 8 years, I still thought chiropractic is all about just neck pain and back pain and nothing else. And then I picked up the original textbook on chiropractic, and then the words back pain don't even show up once in the entire textbook of chiropractic. And I realized original chiropractic was very different than what's being practiced today. And I wanted to go back to the roots of original, philosophically grounded chiropractic, which states this premise that the human body is self-healing, self-regulating. I believe we were created to be able to tolerate stress. We all tolerate stress at different rates in different ways, but we can change that. Even the Bible has verses where it says, do this and you'll add years to your life. And so there are ways to add years to your life. There's certainly ways to subtract years from your life as well.
Yeah.
And if the human body is created to be self-healing and self-regulating, what controls that process? Well, that would be the brain. And how does the brain communicate with your body? It's through the nerves that connect the brain to every cell, every tissue, every organ in your body. As long as there's no interference on that network of nerves, you should have the best health you've ever had in your life, and that's called normal. But if something does interfere with those nerves, the body cannot respond the way it's supposed to. It does as something different, which is be susceptible to illness and injury. That's when inflammatory processes turn into, God forbid, cancer. That's when digestion starts to fail. That's when someone becomes, in their 60s, all of a sudden their heart starts to fail, and you go, what happened? Why did your heart start to fail? And your twin brother's heart didn't. Why is that? Well, some of that. Now, I'm not saying chiropractic is a cure-all. I'm just telling you it's the foundation. That before you do anything else, make sure the network of nerves of your body are free from interference. And so looking at the nervous system, to simplify it, you've got two sides to the autonomic nervous system. By autonomic, that means automatic. There's certain things that happen automatically in your body. If someone scares you, your heart rate will go up. That's automatic. You breathe automatically. Even when you're sleeping, you don't stop breathing. And when you're sleeping, you don't stop. Your heart doesn't stop. Everything's automatically happening. So think about that. All the automatic functions of your body, anything that's involuntary is called autonomic nervous system. Now, there's two sides to that. There's the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is fight or flight. That's when everything's heightened and you're scared, you're worried, you're nervous. That's when those bombs are falling on your head. That's when you show up in Los Angeles and no one speaks your language and you're terrified. I was on the bus with my mother and a man got out of his seat and all he was saying was, "Take my seat." I was so scared because I couldn't understand what he was saying. I thought my life was going to end just because, and he was just being a nice guy saying, "Here, why don't you sit down? I'll stand." But that's that response, that fight or flight response. The opposite of that is rest and repair. Now, in medicine, they call it rest and digest or wine and dine. I like to call it rest and repair because all healing, repair, and regeneration occurs in the parasympathetic side of the nervous system. And so if your body's constantly under fight or flight, you never repair, you never regenerate. Two systems shut down under fight or flight. I say shut down, they just diminish. One is your immune system. Your ability to fight infection goes down when you're in fight or flight. That's the person who's always late for their next appointment. That person is their immune system's going to go down. They will have chronic sinus infections, I promise you. They're the ones that have a sore throat every few months. They're the ones that catch a summer cold. Even though it's not cold, they catch a cold when it's warm. And the other system that slows down is digestion. So if digestion slows down, food sits in your stomach longer because you're not digesting it fast enough. You get indigestion, heartburn, acid reflux, and constipation. There are some people who are chronically constipated. Their bowels don't move very fast. And it has nothing to do with having to take stool softeners. You are not deficient in a chemical that softens your stool. That is not a deficiency that exists. You might be deficient in a vitamin or a mineral, but not a chemical. And so it's because their bodies are stuck in fight or flight. Now, one thing we've learned through research is that misalignments in the spine, and the closer to the brain you are, the more significant that misalignment will be, which is when it's at the very, very top, it's the most effective on your body. And when it's up there, that's what causes hypersympathetics. That's what causes ADHD in a lot of children, is the upper neck misalignments. And so it keeps their body in fight or flight, and they can't repair, they can't regenerate. So they're always constipated, they get heartburn, they get sinus infections, children get a lot of ear infections and so on. So my job as the chiropractor is to restore law and order to that system of nerves, find areas of misalignment, find areas of nerve interference, reduce them, and then activate the parasympathetic side of your nervous system. Because ideally, 80% of the time, you're in parasympathetic, which is rest and repair, and only 20% of the time, you'll be in sympathetics. One other thing that happens, if I may, is not only does your immune system go down, not only does your digestion slow down, but also two other things. One is your ability to burn fat stops. So your cortisol levels go up and you accumulate belly fat. So a lot of times, even if you're not eating a lot, you're going to have higher fat and higher blood sugar because you're in a stressed state. And secondly, and this is, I think, the most important part, is the neocortex shuts down because under fight or flight, all the blood goes to your primitive centers of your brain, which is dealing with primitive things, hunger and fighting and survival and things like that. And so you can't think very well. So one of the things I tell people when they're driving, I say, if someone cuts you off on the street, on the road, and you get angry with them, you should smile and immediately say, "You're not going to make me fat and stupid," because in that state of fight or flight, you're literally becoming fat and stupid, and so you don't want that. So smile and let them do what they want. Don't retaliate. Don't respond, and don't let them bring you down into a state where your immune system is lacking and you can't think properly.
Wow, wow, wow. I mean, I just have so many questions just around that sort of last 3 or 4 minutes that we've listened to. Fascinating, fascinating, fascinating. You touched on gut health there. You know, it's now becoming very more prominent, and quite rightly so. It's referred to as the second brain. You know, gut health affects so many things in the body. If our my microbiomes are not aligned, and again, I'm not an expert, it's just my own sort of research and people around me who have helped me on this. Incredible, Amir, incredible. So Okay, there's a ton of questions on this. We could probably do a whole other episode on just this. So we're gonna just I'm gonna move on a little bit, but it's related, yeah. So, what's your advice then to somebody who has a early musculoskeletal issue? Because and again, I know this is a very expansive question because there's things going to be apparent like make sure you get the right chiropractor, do this, do that, and a musculoskeletal could encompass a lot of things. But generally speaking, if you're getting a twinge, let's say, let's give a little example. Say you get a twinge lower back, and you think, it'll be all right, it'll be fine. I'll just ignore it, like a typical man. I hasten to say. Sorry, a lot of women will also ignore problems.
Oh yeah,
because they've got to raise families and
absolutely,
work and commitments and this and that. And anyway, whatever it is, there's a slight twinge. What's your advice to somebody with an early musculoskeletal issue?
Well, I'll tell you the 5 most dangerous words anyone has ever spoken is thought it would go away.
There you go. Oh my God. I heard myself then.
Yes.
I heard myself. Oh, I thought it would go away.
We are all guilty of that. And I think that's what landed my father in the place he was, because he thought it would all go away. So nothing goes away unless what's causing it goes away. So understand, it's like if the oil light comes on in your car, you don't take a piece of duct tape and cover it up, keep driving. The oil light is not the problem. It's the leak of the oil that's the problem. So we need to go to the root cause of the problem. And when you get a twinge in your back, but there was no trauma, you weren't in a car accident, you didn't get hit by a bat, and you didn't trip and fall or fall out of your chair, but you basically reached for the remote control, or you reached overhead to get a glass out of the cabinet, and all of a sudden something, that means there was something pre-existing already going on. And so you have to understand that that's more serious, and that needs to be addressed even more, taken more seriously. And so what can cause that is multiple things. And I always believe everything has 3 causes. So recently it snowed where you are and where I am. And so what we do when it snows is we grab the shovel, we go out and we clear the walkways and the driveways with shovels, unless you have an electric plow or a gas, whatever. But either way, when you're shoveling, some people will throw out their back and they get back pain, and some people won't. In fact, I'll get a patient who comes to me and says, Doc, it snowed last week. I shoveled even harder. I didn't hurt my back. This week, I shoveled just a little bit, and now my back hurts. Why did it go out this time, not last time? And it's always 3 things. You have to look at, all of life has 3 dimensions to it. There's a chemical dimension, there's this physical dimension, and there is a psycho-emotional dimension. Now, you could add the spiritual dimension, but we don't want to get into that right now. But just looking at the main 3 obvious ones. So when it comes to shoveling snow, what if the night before this person had some Chinese food that had MSG in it, and that's inflammatory? Then that morning when he woke up, he had an argument with his daughter or with his spouse, and he had some emotional stress on top of the chemical stress from the night before. Now you add the physical stress of shoveling snow, and the back goes out. But the last time he went out shoveling snow, he didn't eat something inflammatory the night before. He didn't have an argument with a loved one that morning. And so that was, the stress was just the physical stress, and that he could tolerate. So what we have to do now, wellness is achieved by improving all 3 dimensions simultaneously. So to prevent these silly illnesses and things like that, we need to make sure we're constantly improving all 3 dimensions simultaneously, a little improvement in each. So in the chemical dimension, what are you eating that could be inflammatory? It could be what you mentioned, which is managing your microbiome in your gut. That's extremely important. The psycho-emotional dimension is a powerful one, because if you eat healthy food, but you eat it with the wrong mindset, that food is poison to your body. And I've written about this multiple times. I've spoken about this. Eventually it'll catch on. I always say how you eat is more important than what you eat. And I can prove it to you. You've got a neighbor called France. And in France, they don't have a lot of heart disease, and they don't have a lot of obesity. But across the pond in America, 60% of Americans are obese, and the numbers on diabetes and heart disease are astronomical. So what's the difference? In France, they eat wine, cheese, and bread with almost every meal. In America, we don't touch that stuff because we think it's bad for us. Yet we have the heart disease and they don't. The difference is, and if you've spent any time in the French culture, you don't rush your food. You sit down, you relax, you eat very slowly, and you socialize with your friends. In fact, in America, in kindergarten, they tell the little kids, stop talking to your friends, eat faster. That's during lunchtime.
Really?
In France, they tell the little kids, why are you eating so fast? Talk to your friends. Because that social interaction during eating is so powerful. And so if you're in the car late for your next appointment and you're eating something, but that it's really healthy what you're eating, but you're eating it because you're late and you're rushing through traffic and you're trying to get somewhere, your mindset, your body is not ready to receive that food. Why don't you calm down, play some classical music, and eat your food? Now, there are times I'm very busy. I have 2 offices. We're a team of 4 doctors right now. I have 10 employees. We see over 20,000 patients a year, every year. We're very busy. There are times I only have 10 minutes to eat lunch. But guess what? During those 10 minutes, I turn everything off. I sit down. I unpack my food at my desk. I say a prayer of gratitude. I take a deep breath with a slow exhale. And I start to eat nice and slow. When 10 minutes are up, I didn't eat all of it. Doesn't matter, because the parts that I did eat fed me properly. At that point, I pack my food, put it away, put it back in the fridge, and go back to work. But I will not eat in a state of anxiety and stress because that food becomes poisonous. And so some of the ways, I know you asked me, how do we prevent these musculoskeletal injuries, and then how do we deal with them afterwards? Well, those twinges and things that are happening, a lot of them have outside of physical or musculoskeletal causes that go with it. That's why someone gets tight and tense in their shoulder all the time. Yeah, it's their posture when they're sitting at the computer too. Obviously, there's certain exercises we can certainly do. Raise your monitor so your eyes are at the midway between the top and bottom of your monitor when you're sitting in front of the computer. Make sure your elbows are supported when your hands are on a keyboard or on a mouse. If your elbows are dangling, you're going to have more pressure on your shoulders. We have videos on all of these things. We have 900 plus videos on our YouTube channel. Some of them are educational, some of them are entertaining, some of them are just concepts like we're talking about today. But that's what I teach is all of that. Now, once you do have the pain, at that point, you need to figure out what caused it. And obviously, certainly you could take something to numb the pain, but that's the same as covering up the oil light with a piece of duct tape. So I always say, and you mentioned this, is find a good chiropractor who will take x-rays of your spine, analyze those x-rays. A lot of chiropractors today, and in the United States, it's because insurance companies don't want to pay a lot of money for certain things, and so chiropractors are taking shortcuts, and they're not doing a lot of things that they're supposed to do. But we, in our office, we do digital x-rays on the entire spine. We draw lines, make measurements. I'll give you an example. The angle of the first bone in your neck, when you look at it from the side, needs to be 14 degrees. If it's less than 14 degrees, I know there's pressure on the brainstem. And so we create a corrective plan of bringing that angle back to 14 degrees or higher to take pressure off the brainstem. When that angle is lower than 14, you're susceptible to headaches and migraines, dizziness and lightheadedness and ringing in the ears, but also ADD, ADHD, sleep apnea, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and mood swings. And so sometimes it's just a simple matter of correcting that angle and restoring the proper curvature of the neck. But a good chiropractor will not only analyze that curvature, draw the lines, make the measurements, but after treatment, they'll take another x-ray and compare to see if they made the changes that were supposed to be made. And that's something very, very few chiropractors do today.
Wow. Isn't this just fascinating? I hope, listeners, you're finding this is just so mind-blowing as I am. And you know what strikes me as well, Amir? My grandparents were just amazing individuals on both sides. But they always said the solution is to just keep it simple. But also, as you say, we used to sit down for dinner together. We would talk. We would take our time. No TV, no distractions. Talk about it. There's a problem. talk about it. Let's have a little chat, but enjoy the food. Talk about the food as well, and I'm just picking up one piece there, but it's so interesting. And you mentioned the difference in cultures. I mean, yeah, I live in England. I travel to Europe more than I travel to America, although I did used to go to the States a lot. It's completely different. It's much slower, much more, and sometimes you have to kind of adjust because you're like, oh my God, this is really slow. But I get it. There is less major health things. You're right. In Spain, Italy, France, all of these countries, some might argue where they get more sunshine. Actually, no, they've got a different approach to food and a different approach to not just the ingredients, but the way they eat it.
Right. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. That's incredible. And look, I was going to ask you about the whole holistic approach, but you kind of covered that within the answer. So if you, and again, I was going to ask you if you could summarize what makes you different to others. It's very clear within what you just said. It's going back to, isn't it interesting that when you read that original text, that back pain's not in there.
Yep.
It's again, coming back to, I think you may agree with me, disagree with me, but sometimes we've diluted things so much over time that actually we need to go back to its origin and say, what have we missed here? Because we've changed it. We've changed it so many freaking times. We've diluted it now.
Oh, yeah.
Do you agree?
100%, I agree. I mean, if you have a plant on the windowsill and the plant starts to wither, you don't start to do blood analysis and do a DNA test and everything else. All you do is you go, okay, it's either the soil or it's not getting enough water or it's not getting enough sunlight. And let's make sure those are good. And when you take care of those simple things, that plant comes back to life. And humans are the same. Every animal is the same.
Well, yeah, I love that. Yeah, again, really resonates with me, that, because nature to me is the most powerful thing. Look into nature. It can help you so many ways. And I don't want to go down a little sort of side route here, but if you're feeling stressed, put things down, go and have a walk, calm yourself down, turn your devices off. Anyway, that's a whole, again, I think we could do another episode, don't you?
Absolutely.
So what's the most satisfactory part of your life day to day?
I came out of the gym one day, this was a few years ago, and one of my patients was walking into the gym. She stopped me. She's a young lady. She said, "What did you do to my dad?" And I said, "What do you mean, what did I do to your dad?" She said, "He asked me how I'm doing." I said, "Well, okay, what did you say?" She said, No, you don't get it. He's never asked me how I'm doing. But ever since he started going to the chiropractor, he's nicer. And he talks to me. And he asked me how I'm doing. He's a different person. And so, you could say it's because he's not in pain anymore. Maybe he was in pain all his life. I think there's a lot more to that, is when the body can relax, you can think better and all that stuff. And when your body's in more of the parasympathetic state of the nervous system, that's when the neocortex is getting enough blood and you can think clearly and you understand. But also, nerve interference doesn't just stop from pain signals to get into the brain. It also blocks pleasure. It slows down pleasure. So a beautiful sunrise or a beautiful sunset isn't as beautiful when you have nerve interference, because nerves bring information to the brain and nerves take information away from the brain to your organs. And so you miss out on a lot of things. So what's satisfying is to see people come out from the shell that they're stuck in, to break the walls that are around them that prevent them from really enjoying life, experiencing it to the fullest. Hugging a baby feels different when you don't have interference in your nervous system. Being with your spouse is different when you don't have interference in your nervous system. You think better, you feel better, you act better, your relationships are better. And I'll tell you one other thing. I think this is probably the most important thing that I could say to anyone, is when my father was ill, when he was sick, when he was hurting, when he was suffering, he wasn't the only one suffering. Because my mother suffered too because of his pain. His son, me, I suffered too because dad was in pain. And if I don't take care of my health, I am not the only one who's going to suffer. My three sons will suffer too. My wife will suffer too. Anyone who cares about me will suffer too. Most people say, I'm going to take care of everybody else. This is the mom you were talking about, right? Who says, I think it'll go away. She goes, let me take care of everybody else. Then I'll take care of me. But what everybody else needs is a better you. And so the most selfless thing you can do is put your health ahead of some other things. Take care of your health. Then you can be your best for others, because that's what everybody else needs. When you're healthy, they're happier. Why don't you set the example so they'll do the same thing? Always understand that your health should be priority.
That's so beautiful. So beautiful. And I'm sure a lot of people are listening to that, myself included, thinking, yeah, I get it. You can't pour from an empty cup. And you shouldn't try to.
I agree. Very nice.
Okay, so I'm dying to ask you this, but I kind of know the answer, because now we've spent nearly an hour together. It's very, very evident that, this life's journey, with its twists and turns and with its revelations and with its beautiful pieces in there as well. I need to ask you, Amir, I'm guessing you've done okay. Yeah, you've made a few quid. Yeah, you could just sort of maybe just relax a little bit more, but you just said it's still full on. Why do you continue to do what you do?
The answer may not. So if I'm honest with myself,
Please.
I feel like it's in my nature, because when things get hectic and crazy and overwhelming, I'll sit down with my wife and we say, we could downsize, go back to a small practice, just one doctor, a couple of assistants, and see a handful of patients, and we'd be fine. We don't need all this. We can sell the offices and ride off into the sunset, and we both say, but we'd start all over, and within a few years, we'd be right back where we are today, because that's who we are. So years ago, Brandy, my wife, we were at a resort. It was a beautiful resort in Arizona, United States, and we were talking. It was the last day we were there. We're in the pool, sipping some drinks and relaxing and meeting some amazing people. And I said, I miss the beginning. And she said, what do you mean? I said, there was a lot of excitement at the beginning when we were just starting out, when we didn't have anything, when we were risking it all, when we thought we might not be able to eat dinner that night, or we had to struggle a little bit. I miss that. I want to go back to how that was, because that was exciting. And I think that appeals to me. And she said, well, again, kind of like what my dad said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, if our vision is bigger, if our vision is just 2 offices and a handful of doctors serving our city, great. We're doing that and we're done. But if our vision was bigger, we haven't even started. We're at the beginning. And so why don't we scale up and build something amazing? Why don't we build a brand that's unprecedented? Why don't we go big and think big? And you can think of other brands around the world that have done something big, and I don't have to finish it, but I have to start it and get it rolling. And then, hopefully someone will, once I move on and pass on to the next world, someone will pick it up. I don't know how far it's going to go, but I'm not going to stop. And retirement plan is, if I live to be 120, I'll retire. Otherwise, there's no retirement. I'm going.
Again, that hits me where it's supposed to, because I think a lot of people, they take the time out, they retire early, they get bored, they might turn to things which are not healthy for them. Too much drink, too much partying, too much unhealthy lifestyle, eating shit, not doing anything.
Yep.
And then where does that all end up? You've done all that you've done to actually become ill. Now, I know this is going to go, hey, come on in, I actually quite fancy just sitting around doing nothing. Okay, well, if that's your choice, I get it. And you
Absolutely.
And you might go and just do other things which are healthy for you. But I love what you just said there, but especially that piece of starting over. I want to go back to that. Well, we can. Let's go from where we are now, and let's go more. It's kind of starting over, isn't it? Well, it is.
It is.
Wow. Okay. So if you were sitting in front of somebody right now, it's going to be, metaphorically speaking, we are. If somebody's listening to this, lots of people are listening to this around the world in 67 countries right now. And somebody is struggling with their medical exams. Or perhaps it's just somebody struggling to find their passion and their purpose because of maybe limiting circumstances or something in them that's been believed that they're limited. Is there a piece of advice, Amir, that you would share that could perhaps encourage them to keep going?
Yeah, so, if they're struggling with their medical exams, my advice is always you have to, in today's world, you have to be your own doctor. You don't need a medical degree to do that. You know you better than anybody else. You have lived in that body your entire life. You know it. Just become more intuitive and listen to it. Do your own research. Talk to multiple doctors. Never take one person's word as certain. Always get two other opinions and make sure you've done your research. Someone recommends a treatment for you. Don't follow that until you've researched it and you know that is the absolute best choice. We have more options today than ever before. There's search engines that you can look up any information right now, and then there's artificial intelligence as well, which every day blows me away at how much they can do. Nowadays, a lot of doctors are being replaced with artificial intelligence, and doctors are actually consulting with AI to give their diagnosis. So why can't you do the same thing? Decide right here, right now, you are your own best doctor. And secondly, the doctor you see is working for you. So I know some doctors have a God complex of, I am the best and my word is yeah, and that's not true. You can hire a doctor, you can fire a doctor. You fire your doctor and hire someone else. They work for you. You are their boss. They cannot eat and live and feed their family without you. So understand that. Now, when it comes to achievements of goals and dreams and futures, I firmly believe the number one reason people fail to achieve their goals, dreams, and aspirations is because they are not equipped to handle the stress that they will face on the road to greatness. You pick something you want. You want to go for a higher degree. You want to go back to school and learn something new, get another degree. Guess what? It's not going to be easy. So if you have the ability to handle that stress, you will achieve it. If you don't have the ability to handle that stress, you won't. So you need to train for it. If you want to increase the size of your family, you're going to be faced with stress. If you're single and you want to get married, guess what? There's going to be stress. If you want to start a business, guess what? It's going to be stressful. Anything worth doing, anything worth achieving, anything worth dedicating your life to will come with resistance and challenges that you cannot dream of today. And it will push you to your limits. And whether you succeed or not is determined by how much stress you are willing and able to tolerate.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So, what's the future looking for like for you? You said that it's now possible that the practices that you have are going to expand. You've spoken about making more differences to more lives. You're on YouTube. You wrote books. You've been recognized by the U.S. medical health thing, whatever it's called. Yeah, excuse me for I can revert back to the U.S. Department of Health. There we go. And what's the future looking for you, Amir? What's the next steps for you? What would you like to continue to achieve?
Two ways.
Let me answer that, both professionally and personally.
Got it. Yeah, there are times where our plans don't match God's plan, And so we'll hit some roadblocks and challenges, and then realize, God has something better for you. So obviously, if most importantly, I just want to follow His leading. I want to make sure that I'm being obedient to His direction. If He wants me to succeed, great. If not, then there's other pathways. Obviously, I always say I want to honor God, glorify God in everything that I do. I want to humbly serve people in general. I want to build lasting relationships that outlast even me. And then, so that's, and ideally, this is the professional side of it. I want to build an institution that'll outlast me. So these chiropractic offices, whether we open 1,000 more or we only open 1 or 2 more, it doesn't matter. But I need to set them up so that when I pass on, they continue to serve our core values and serve the people of their community in each of these offices as well, if not better, once I'm gone.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed this time with you.
Me too.
Yeah, and I am coming to America. People know this, so we're going to hang out. I want to see
All right.
you. Yeah. But how can people find you? So you mentioned YouTube. You mentioned you're on other social media, LinkedIn. What's the best way What's the best way for people to just look and just learn, re-educate themselves, get better, and ultimately, if they want to, come and be treated by you or one of your fellow professionals?
Sure. There's 2 websites. One is called drrashidian.com. The other is midatlanticclinic.com. Mid-Atlantic Clinic is the office website. The 2 locations can be addressed there. Appointments can be made through the website. And we have a podcast called Real Health with Brandy and Amir. It's my wife and I. We read all the latest articles in health and wellness. We discuss it, and sometimes we argue. So we decided we'd record it, let everybody listen in on that.
I love that.
And
what's that called? Remind us, please.
The Real Health Podcast with Brandy and Amir.
Okay, I love that. Okay.
Our YouTube channel is called Real Chiropractic.
There you go.
And I think that's enough. Obviously, on Amazon, you can find my 2 books if you're interested in learning about stress management and how to become more resilient towards stress.
Thank you, Amir. I'm going to, just for listeners who are listening and maybe driving the car, walking the dog, whatever they're doing right now, and you didn't catch all of that, on the footnotes of this episode, all of Amir's details will be listed. I knew it was going to be good. You have really, really made me think about a few things. You've educated me. You're a really nice guy. And thank you so much, Amir. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.